Greetings, everyone. Welcome. We'll begin in just a minute. I'm going to wait till exactly 9:15, but I am happy to see you here. Welcome. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Um, my name is Dr. Suzanne Serif. I'm the director of the Social Justice Internship Program at the Schusterman Center for Jewish Studies. I also teach in the Department of Anthropology at the University of Texas at Austin. I'm really excited to be participating with you all in this inaugural Social Justice Network Forum on campus in the next 2 days. And I'd like to share with you today a little bit about a new program at the Schusterman Center for Jewish Studies, which is a internship program for students throughout the undergraduate students throughout the university. Our talk today is called Praying with Your Feet, a town gown social justice internship model, both within and beyond university walls. The title, Praying with Your Feet, comes from the march, the famous Civil Rights March in 1965 from Selma to Montgomery with Martin Luther King Jr., in which he was joined by several people, including Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who, when asked about his role in the march, said, I'm praying with, or is said to have said, he may not actually have said it, praying with my feet, meaning that prayer and social justice action go hand in hand and are necessary for each other. So I like to think about that in terms of thinking about social justice action in this context as praying with your feet. This is the inaugural class in the spring of 2019 of the Social Justice Internship Program. There I am with 9 students, I believe, and the interesting thing is that the class has shaken out every semester to be about 9 or 10 or a dozen students. Um, each semester we advertise the course and the program, which is 130 hours of internship work with a 3-hour course credit, and it also has an ethics and independent inquiry flag, which is attractive for undergraduate students. And it's open to all undergraduate students throughout the university. I like to think of our program as a 3-pronged stool that includes text study, stories from the community, and direct action as the internship. So I want to explain that a little bit more before I introduce our incredible guests that I have with us today on this panel. In terms of text study, we use a textbook by Rabbi Jill Jacobs called There Shall Be No Needy, Pursuing Social Justice Through Jewish Law and Tradition. And every week, we study a chapter in the book. The chapters are on social justice issues like poverty alleviation, homelessness and housing, food insecurity, environmental justice, immigrant rights, work ethics. And we also begin with text study, and in that book there are passages from the Hebrew Bible, from the Torah, and from subsequent rabbinic commentary. Most of the students who come to the class are not Jewish, I would say. We've had Muslim, Christian, Catholic, Buddhist students, and many of them come with a lot of trepidation, having no idea what Judaism is, much less Jewish text study. And in the first couple weeks of the class, we welcome Rabbi Neil Blumofe from Congregation Agudas Achim into our classroom. Here we are actually at Agudas Achim, where he explains what do we mean by Jewish texts and actually shows students the Torah scrolls and how do we study them. So we take passages from the Hebrew Bible, from Deuteronomy, Exodus, etc., um, and look at concepts like tikkun olam, repairing the world, tzedakah, the obligation to give, and see where do those ideas of social justice come from, and how do we study a Jewish text to understand them better and more deeply. Students are moved by the opportunity to study Jewish texts and to think about social justice issues more broadly. I begin the class every semester with a pairing exercise where I invite students to talk to each other about to whom or to what do you feel responsible? And it's a topic that we come back to again and again and again as we explore the idea of justice, the idea of human rights, and who's responsible for justice in the world, in our society, in our person. The second prong of the three-pronged stool is stories. Every single week, the class meets once a week in a seminar style for 2 hours on Wednesday evenings. We usually meet around the conference table at the Schusterman Center. The last 3 semesters, we've met online, but every week I bring in a rock star from the social justice community who happens to be Jewish, who shares their story of how they came to do the work they do and how they came to feel um, an obligation to make the world a better place. And if their Jewish identity or upbringing or background has anything to do with that. We're going to hear from one of those incredible rock stars today, Irit Umani, who comes to our class very generously every semester and just blows the students away. So here's Irit this semester as we met online. Um, and you can see here's another one of our speakers, Harvey Berg, who's a civil rights lawyer. He was one of the he comes and speaks to us about his work in the 60s and 70s, and here he's showing himself with John Lewis of blessed memory. And again, you can see one of the students' reflections every week when guest speakers have shared their personal stories. My perspective on my own community has been transformed. Speaking with presidents, directors, attorneys, officials in the Texas government, executive directors, and founders of social justice programs throughout the community has provided an experience I will never be able to forget. As a non Jew, I was extremely grateful to have been given an opportunity to learn about Judaism through this platform of action. I've been inspired by the Jewish community to implement many of their fundamental devotions into my own personal life. And the third prong, the most important prong, is the internship itself. Students commit to interning 10 hours a week for a total of 130 hours, and they intern at um, there are over 24 social justice and arts organizations around Austin that students have interned at, and they can also find their own internship. So you can see the list of some of the partners, the community partners that we have, and we have a representative of the Migrant Clinicians Network, Deliana Garcia, with us today, who's going to speak about from the organizational's point of view about what it's like to have one of our interns in her class, in her organization. The students actually need to apply for their own internships. They're not given to them. And so I meet with them to determine what their interests are and suggest 3 or 4 organizations that might fit where their interests might fit the organization's need. And then the students write their own letters. This was a letter actually to the Migrant Clinicians Network by one of our interns this semester, who's a linguistics major who was very interested and also from the border in interning at the Migrant Clinicians Network to hone her skills translating from English to Spanish and Spanish into English. And then they meet with the supervisors um, uh, in order to apply for the internship, just like you would apply for a job. This is a student comment who interned at the Blanton Museum of Art, who said that her internship allowed her to connect to many of the separate dots in my life related to the love for art, my passion for social justice, and my desire to work in the service of others through whatever avenue I choose. With the principles of Jewish texts and their relationship with my Muslim upbringing, I hope that I can serve the world in more ways than one. Um, this was, I'm not going to take the time to show this right now, but this was a digital story that one of the interns produced about her work at Casa Marianella one semester. Um, and putting all these prongs together, stories from the community, study from Jewish texts, and the internship experience. I just wanted to give you a quote from one of the interns, our first semester at Migrant Clinicians Network, who said, our weekly seminar class focused on Jewish teachings in relation to social justice, and I believe that what I learned in my internship at the Migrant Clinicians Network helped reinforce the things that were discussed in class: retaining the dignity of the individuals who we serve, moral fuel and moral injury, and creating and recreating wholeness for our individual selves and for the world. And finally, no Jewish class is complete without food and song and poetry and study. Every semester, we have a culminating event around a Jewish holiday. In the spring, it's Passover, and in the fall, it's the holiday of Sukkot, in which we study the themes of the holiday: freedom, liberation for Passover, the vulnerability of home, and the connection with our neighbors for Sukkot, along with food and drink. Um, Before COVID, we met in person. This was our Passover study at Agudas Achim with Rabbi Blumofe leading our study. And you can see one of the students' comments: gathered around the table were our friends, our mentors, and our guest speakers. It was an experience like no other and was truly a night I'll never forget. Over great food with great people, stumbling over words from the Haggadah, we celebrated the Jewish ancestral struggle to freedom. To have so many people from so many backgrounds talk about their struggles and triumphs, their beliefs and their passions, ignites a fire in you like no other. Um, Last year was the first year that we had to quickly transition to a virtual Seder because of COVID. And here we are at our virtual Seder from my husband and my kitchen, dining room. And in the fall, the celebration of Sukkot with a sukkah for social change at the synagogue. Here we are at the synagogue in 2019. And again, this fall, we had to transition to a virtual celebration, which we did by creating what I called a sukkah in a box, which was complete with homemade harvest challahs, which I ended up delivering to each student in the class safely, masked and social distance. Here are the students accepting their deliveries, which included supplies for making their own sukkahs, miniature sukkahs, step-by-step instructions, how to decorate the sukkah, how to invite guests into the sukkah, ushpizin. And here are a couple of the students' miniature sukkahs. and a virtual peek into a real backyard sukkah in our virtual event for the fall. And finally, I just want to wrap up by sharing a couple of students' final reflections about what this experience of a social justice internship program has meant to them. One student who is not Jewish said in a final reflection, "I take with me the liberating phrase from Pirkei Avot that reads, 'It's not your responsibility to finish the work, but neither are you free to desist from it.' This course truly challenged me to wrap my head around difficult concepts, and I would have to take moments after class to process the heavy emotions. Yet I am now more confident that my efforts to heal the world are important and impactful, but I do not have to solve every problem or be done alone." Another student wrote, "As a non-Jew, I was extremely grateful to have been given an opportunity to learn about Judaism through this platform of action." And finally, one student wrote, "As our last speaker put it best, social justice isn't just a Jewish thing, it's a human thing. It's the humane thing to do." And with that, I will stop sharing um, and open the floor to my other panelists who I've invited today, including Rabbi Neil Blumofe, um, who's the senior rabbi at Congregation Agudas Achim here in Austin, Deliana Garcia, who is the head of international programs at the Migrant Clinicians Network. I'm not sure I have that title completely right. And Irit Umani, who's the executive director of the Trinity Center, which is a day center for the unhoused in Austin. I'm going to turn now to Rabbi Blumofe to ask if he would to just share a few thoughts about your involvement from the very beginning in helping me to conceptualize this program from the ground up, in helping me select a text, and also in grounding the students every semester in Jewish text study. Rabbi Blumofe?
Thank you, Dr. Serif. I really appreciate the partnership that we've shown and demonstrated in this class, and I'm grateful to you and to Galit, Dr. Lichtenstein, and the entire faculty at the Schusterman Center for lifting this up and making this a priority as we really transform not only the lives of students, but also to revivify and to show the power of the Jewish tradition in seeking justice, equity, goodness, and possibility in this world. So I'm really grateful to be able to not only partner with the holidays, with the festivals in the fall and in the spring, with Sukkot and this idea of vulnerability and fragility in the fall in terms of taking what we have for granted and not taking it for granted. And in the spring, recognizing the power of recognizing our limitations, our narrow spaces, and moving into a sense of freedom fearlessly. So we ground, as you mentioned, the course in 2 sessions with a text study. And what we try to do, as I know our other speakers will tell you, that this idea of looking for balance, looking for justice in our world is throughout our texts. It is found in every book of the Torah, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. I'm not preaching, I'm just talking. And it's also found in our Hebrew Bible, our larger expanse. I do want to mention too that I'm, in addition to the affiliation I have with the Schusterman Center, I do this kind of work both at the Austin Seminary, the Presbyterian Seminary, and the Seminary of the Southwest at the Episcopal Seminary, which I'm honored and pleased to be able to do. So what we seek to do is to recognize that Jewish law and narrative must be lived out in the world. It must be sharpened and given meaning. And the words of the Bible are not just to be, offered, but rather they're to be mediated through human understanding and experience. And the recognition of how and deep these terms and concepts are, as Dr. Serif shared, you heard terms like tikkun olam, tzedakah, and we really look to see what those are. We unpack them. We talk about various modalities of Judaism, including prophetic Judaism, as was offered in not only the Book of the Prophets, but through subsequent generations as well. And as you saw intimated in some of the comments of the students, their idea of how to take care of oneself and how to go out into the world and how to do that safely so one doesn't experience burnout as well. As we work towards, let's say, structural or systemic changes, there's a very important aspect of an individual sense of wholeness and goodness as well. So we do this through conversations. As was said, most of the students don't have this kind of background, so there's not an illusion that they're all going to be sort of, para-rabbis at the end, but rather the recognition that they're steeped, that this is not just coming from a place of, with all due respect, just a humane sensibility, but this is a direction of what Judaism teaches. And we learn from other examples within the Jewish tradition. We learn about the structure of how texts are understood regarding the Tanakh or the Hebrew Bible and oral commentary, whether it's the Mishnah, the Talmud, or Midrash as well. We learn how to study. There's a concept of pardes, of looking at the exegetical formulae of how to enter into Jewish texts. And there's a way of taking things literally and inferring things that we walk the students through that I think is not only applied to text study, but to how to look at the world as well, and to realize, to develop, if you will, an emotional intelligence about what's going on, and to develop a broader base of things. In addition, we talk about judgment and reward. And since Dr. Serif brought up this quote from Deuteronomy, I know Irit is going to have a different section that she's going to talk about, which is great. This idea of justice, justice shall you pursue. That sounds amazing. And yet, let's look at it and we sort of think about, why then is justice repeated? What does it mean that you shall pursue it? Where shall we go? There's the second half of the verse that isn't studied as much, which is, you do that, then you may thrive and inhabit the land that God is giving you. What does that mean? And the recognition of how to transverse these ideas is really helpful for really opening up the possibilities of what we do, how we do it, and on what scale we do it as well. We recognize how embedded these ideas are within the Hebrew Bible. We see that it is a living document, not only in the rabbinic age, but it has certainly found its way into our world as well. And we hopefully motivate the kids, the students, excuse me. We hopefully, I'm the town part, sorry. We motivate the students, to not to fall in love with the text or to study, but to fall in love with their idea of exploration, to fall in love with a sense of creativity. Judaism is a mechanism to do that, but we really encourage them in their own traditions and their own backgrounds to really immerse and recognize that this careful interrogation, this curiosity that they may have, will lead them well, not only in this magnificent program that Dr. Serif has built in collaboration with the Schusterman Center, but in their own lives as well. So we hope, and part of my own, and I'll just end with this, part of my own agenda and hope, one of the reasons I'm in Austin, Texas, is to help to demystify Judaism for the larger public as well. So for me, there's an added benefit of being immersed in a rhythm of something with non-judgment, to be able to confront or to connect to and hopefully make alliedship with Jews and Jewish community in their quest for their own wholeness and their quest for justice in this world. I'm grateful to be included. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Blumofe. Really appreciate it. And now I'd like to invite Irit Umani to say a few words. Irit has also been part of our program from the very beginning, and I thank Rabbi Blumofe for introducing us at the beginning and for letting me know about Irit's incredible work with people experiencing homelessness in Austin. Irit is one of the speakers who comes every semester, and the student reflections after her visit are remarkable. You'll see in just a moment, she has a presence that really calls people to pay attention to themselves, to their words, and to their work in the world. So Irit, help us talk about what this storytelling session is all about.
So to me, the part of the storytelling or sharing with the students the work of social justice in real terms is about personally my own preparation to maybe retire and go smell the roses while knowing that the baton is in good hands. And there is one of my most favorite things is to share the story of my life of service with the younger generation, because the work is never completed. And in recent years, we have seen examples of what happened as when we, the people, don't show care, and the potential of we, the people, show care. So I put it in, I have a lot of passion for compassion. And I chose at a certain point in my life to live a path of service. So within the Jewish context, my accent is Israeli, and I'm born into the tribe of Judaism in the land of Israel, and it's really my formative place. Although my personal practice is intentionally of bringing different traditions, to faith traditions together, rather than fighting one another. So I like sharing it, and I like kind of lighting a fire under the feet of younger generation to walk the talk, or to do work of justice, because to me it's the essence of one's actualization of any faith tradition. This very last Shabbat Friday, I led a Zoom Shabbat. So part of what I do in a Zoom Shabbat is I shared from the weekly portion of the Elder Testament, the Torah that we are studying every Shabbat. And this very last one from the book of Leviticus is a blueprint. It says, when you harvest your field, make sure you don't harvest it all the way to the edge of it. Leave some of the edge for anybody who is in need to harvest for themselves. Don't go and pick up the vineyard twice. Whatever is left, leave it to the poor to pick up. It has a beautiful sentence that says, you don't curse the deaf or put a stumble block in front of the blind. It's just, I read this portion, which is mostly Leviticus 19 and 20, and it's a blueprint. The way I talked about it on Shabbat, it was a blueprint of what it is to, in actual terms, to be a decent human being. Just be a decent human being. And to me, decent human being is not just about oneself and one's profit and one's well-being. It's about us, the village, that we are part of, and what part am I playing in making the village more equitable to all, more just for all. It's interesting, I knew that I'm starting the day today with this gathering, and then I got a text from a friend just this morning that says, from the Dalai Lama, which is not our tradition, but he said, people were created to be loved. Things were created to be used. The reason the world is in chaos is because things are being loved and people are being used. It's like, give it to him to just have it in 2 sentences, right? And so my imperfect path is the path of loving our neighbors, which I read as loving our fellow human being. And when I come to the class, it's like, here I am starting my 70s, and all these students are in their late teens and and beginning 20s. And I'm like, go kiddos. Yeah, I know students, but I'm saying again, kiddos, because it's the younger generation and we need to share our experience. So the fact that they think I'm inspiring to them, fantastic. That's my role. When I retire, hopefully in a year, that's what I want to do. I want to go talk to the younger generation and explain my approach to service, my approach to my Jewishness. My, it's like in town. Oh, I'm going too low. In town, there is a huge debate now about Prop B, which is against the unhoused people. Let's push them back to the woods. We don't want to see it. We don't want to solve it, but we don't want it in front of our faces. And most of the people against it are for it are Christian. And I'm saying, what would Jesus do? Go and do likewise. With the emphasis on go and do likewise. So I'm trying to do likewise and to teach doing likewise.
Thank you so much, Irit. And finally, the heart of the program, of course, is the internship itself. And to represent one of the organizations that actually I think has hosted more interns than any other so far, sometimes like this semester, as many as 3. I'd like to invite Deliana Garcia to say a few words from the Migrant Clinicians Network. And Deliana, I'm looking at our questions, and one of the questions that someone asked was a question about, she actually directed it to Rabbi Blumofe, but it might be pertinent in your responses, a question about your thoughts on how we avoid burnout as we do social justice work. Anyway, Deliana Garcia.
Thank you so much, Dr. Serif. And thank you so much, Rabbi Blumofe and Irit. You all set the tone absolutely perfectly. And I think what's been so exciting about having the students from this course in our organization is that they come already curious and with the notion that their work is framed in trying to understand what we're doing from a social justice perspective, so that it's not us trying to present it so much, although we do regularly in our work. I mean, our mission statement is to be a force for justice in healthcare. And so when they come already seeking for themselves, then what it allows me to do is say, from my perspective, there are 2 pieces. As Jews, we are asked to be welcoming, to welcome the stranger. And so for me, then this is very exciting because I enjoy welcoming people and talking to them and having an understanding of what motivates them and what brings them to us. What was it about MCN that caught their attention, and making sure that then we give them more of an opportunity to have that experience. And then the other piece for me is, what matters is what you do in this life, that it's not for the next or quietly, that it is as, Irit was saying, being decent and walking and doing it. And as you showed that photograph at the start of your presentation of Rabbi Heschel, it made me think of another moment for the senator who was beside him, who was walking across the Pettus Bridge. And I've forgotten Senator John's last name, Lewis, was struck and his skull was fractured. A young physician named Count Gibson and a medical student named Jack Geiger attended to him immediately. And they were the ones that called for the helicopter to be brought in. And Count Gibson and Jack Geiger are the founders of the Community Health Center movement, which is the group with whom I work and all of the health centers that we serve around the country. And so it is in that background as well that wellness and wholeness and justice have many pieces, and we have a great deal of responsibility to do well by others, to be decent, and to look. And it was so funny, it made me laugh when Rabbi Blumofe said, in a non-judgmental way, which is still the goal that I'm working on, because I'm loaded with judgment, but to try and say people bring what they can. And what that has really taught me over time, And it was one of the students who asked me, because I talk about what's happening to clinicians and lawyers and at the border and for ourselves. You know, I work with a young staff that hears daily of people that cannot access healthcare and the moral injury that results in that. That how much can your soul or your spirit or your heart or whatever take from that daily onslaught? And a lovely student across from me said, you spoke about moral injury, but what's your moral fuel? And I thought, oh my gosh, it's you. It's you. It is hope. As Irit was saying, it's hope that when I look around the room, it's not going to end with my generation. It's not going to, I can add 3 of their ages together. I'm still older. It's not going to end with me. They are moving forward, and they are moving forward with conviction and heart. And so that's what buoys me up. I don't burn out because there is that image of hope that comes to us every semester from your class, Dr. Serif. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much to all of you. And I feel remiss that I didn't include a student in our panel, at least one student, but we've got about a little bit over 10 minutes left, and I'd like to open the floor to questions or comments, even among our group. We have a few questions that have already been started on the Q&A thread. Because of the webinar format, I will ask you to write your questions in the Q&A. And one of the is a comment. Ms. Umani and Ms. Garcia, your commitment to justice and service is so inspiring. You have so much to teach all of us. Thank you so much for what you do. And this person also asked, how can we at UT support and nurture more social justice work with our students? And what kinds of resources are needed to do that. And I think that this Social Justice Network Forum is an appropriate beginning to suggest that there is much more work to be done. I believe strongly, and I think many of us in this forum believe strongly in the importance of undergraduates having opportunities for experiential hands-on learning, especially in the realm of social justice. And it does take quite a lot of coordination, but I do think that the key is to marry the internship with organizations with a university-based program that allows students to form a community of practice together and experience what it's like to work in the real world with organizations like those of Trinity Center, Migrant Clinicians Network, Texas After Violence Project, Art from the Streets. They are very, very taxing programs on people's young hearts and souls. And to be able to explore that together in community, I think is very, very important and is a key. We've been lucky at the Schusterman Center to have their support, both financial and material support. One of the things that I feel is very important is that internship students should be paid because they're doing real work. And some of our organizations are able to pay their interns, but some are not. And our interns do get class credit, but we at the Schusterman Center have some fellowship funds that we try to disperse for scholarships for students. And that's one way I can think of that support in the realm of providing financial support for students who are spending 130 hours during their semester when they can't be working to help pay for their college education would be very important. Rabbi Blumofe.
I think that's a really great point, Dr. Serif. The other thing that I would just raise, and since you spoke about the UT system or across UT, would be to pay close attention to the mental health programs and the access that would have for the students as well. We've all spoken about ways that this might disrupt or deepen one's commitment to the world. And we certainly recognize in the pandemic time, when mental health issues are soaring, certainly among the young, that we would want to hold tight to the journey that the students are on, and to pay attention to that, and not just sort of celebrate the work that they're doing and recognizing how important that is. Of course it is. And we want to maybe hopefully pay attention to the inner journey that they're having. That word tikkun olam is not just outward focused. Its origin is in the mystical tradition of recognizing that all is going well within. And if there's resources available from UT or from the Schusterman Center or whatever, I think it's an important thing to on which to concentrate.
That's an extremely important point. Thank you.
And Dr. Serif, you had spoken in your original slide about an ethics flag. What is that?
Undergraduate students at the University of Texas have to take 6 courses in 6 different flags, which are courses that have been designed to give students particular skills that the university has determined that they need. One of them is a writing flag to help with writing. One of them is a global diversity flag. One of them is a cultural diversity flag, and one of the flags is an ethics flag. So they're required to take a course that has applied for and been approved as a course that has studies of ethics and moral issues, issues of justice, issues of responsibility embedded in the study. So there are many social works courses that have an ethics flag, and this is one. The other flag is an independent inquiry flag, which also recognizes UT's support of hands-on experiential learning and the importance of students getting an experience where they can apply the critical skills, critical theory and study skills that they're learning in their courses to real life experiences, and succeed and fail in their attempts to apply those things on their own. So that's something else that we have here.
As I would say, Dr. Serif, we've also at MCN had students that came to us from the independent study flag, and then the international or the global. And how they came to us is because someone within their world designed a program that gave them access to an organization like ours. And I think that there could, while you were saying that it is difficult to and takes a lot of energy, it would be really wonderful to see more of those kinds of opportunities for students. And I would certainly encourage one in writing. One of the things that you always hear me say is that I don't know how the students are getting out sometimes because their writing is not as complete in its structure and learning as I think they need to be out in the world. And for somebody to tell me, well, there's no more writing anymore because everything is a short message and it's all computerized. I think that there is something about being able to articulate your thoughts and your work and your expression that really bears support, particularly for young people. And I think it has that element that Rabbi Blumofe is talking about in terms of the inner world and the inner path that the students are on.
Thank you for saying that. I think that's very important. And one of the things that I've realized in directing this program is that many students have never applied for a job or written a letter of inquiry and have no idea how to do it. So I've discovered that that's my first job, even before the class begins, is to provide templates and help people understand what such a letter entails, what needs to be in it, how you address an organization, which is one of the reasons why I showed you that letter from one of the students to the Migrant Clinicians Network. Some students are just very proficient and some are not at all. So we do explore that as well. And I have the director of the Schusterman Center, Tatiana Lichtenstein, is one of the participants, and I just want to share a comment that she wrote in the question and answer, which is, Wonderful to hear the mutual inspiration. I have followed the program via Dr. Serif and the students, but it is the first time I hear what it means to you, the social justice rock stars. Thank you for all that you do. And there's another question in the Q&A. I'm not sure whether participants can see the Q&A, but I wanted to read one question, and I can talk about it a minute, but also I wanted to open up to the others. I'm looking for the question. I'm not seeing it anymore. It was a question about that from the academic point of view, there are a lot of people who hear a course about Jewish studies and think about the Palestinian issue and wondering how or if we deal with that in our class. And this was a question that was directed to all of us. And I wonder if Irit or Rabbi Blumofe, you'd like to address that, because it is a question that has come up with our students. One of the beautiful things, as I said, is that this class frequently has many students from many different faith traditions in the class, including Muslims and Christians and Jews and Buddhists. And this kind of question does come up, and we explore it through our text study, as certainly during Passover, we've explored it on questions of freedom and issues there. Rabbi Blumofe, if you want to start us off real quick, and then I'll get to you, Irit.
Well, thank you. I know Irit has answered the question in her own way. I also, recognize that is something, and I appreciate, I think, Dr. Strong, you asking that question. This idea of one of the first texts that we actually study, and this is not an avoidance, this is just actually an understanding of how Judaism sort of works, at least in the rabbinic realm, which is its own thing, which is in a section of the Talmud, there is a recognition of two positions being right at the same time. And your position is right, and your position is right, recognizing that in a dispute, it's much more than just a binary understanding, that there's an understanding that to really understand how the world is working, we have to recognize that we own maybe a partial truth, and there are partial truths owned out in the world. And to be able to live in that turbulence, to be able to be generous in that turbulence, and to be able to be hopeful in that turbulence is very, very important. So there are many ways and modalities of Judaism, of how it lives. We don't, unfortunately, have the time to get into the various developments of Judaisms in the world. But if one boils things down or reduces things to a particular moment, I think we're missing the opportunity to continue to grow generously and in sweet and loving contradistinction to others who may hold other views as well. And I think knowing the friction, but the loving friction between, let's say, Hillel and Shammai, the two who are represented in this sugya, in this section from the Talmud, helps us perhaps enter into some of the real world issues that are certainly a fire in our world.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. It is actually 10 o'clock, but I would love it, Reed, if you just have a sentence or two that you might want to maybe read what you responded to in the Q&A.
Well, it's like I would second Rabbi Blumofe in saying it's really complex. So my part of it is that I would be considered radical left, and I was a very on the ground peace activist when I was in Israel, and every work I did was a collaboration of Israeli, Palestinian, Jews, Christian working together. But at the same time, because of what the rabbi said, I want to balance it with saying, if we are living in a country that has a demonstration that says Jews would not replace us, which is Nazism, right? And the world, the people who ask us about Palestine, Israel conflict, don't see that the existence of Israel is stamped in a place where so many people think that Jews will not replace us, that it's really, really, really complex. And there is a lot of work to be done for the two people, the three people, all people to come together.
Thank you so much. And I will just close and thank you all so much for being here and for your questions by saying that the beauty of this program is that it is a program where dialogue is welcome, where social justice is taken to heart. And the main thing I think students learn is the importance of dignity for everyone and everyone created in God's image. So thank you so much. And please contact me or any of us if you have further questions. Take care.